some of the ladies actually asked me if I could go and get some more biscuits. They thought that I was the help.
Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
One of the joys of being part of education has been my growth and understanding of being a male in the education system and teaching. So I want to go backwards a wee bit. When I first entered into the teaching training scene in Waikato University, there were a huge volume of males that started with me, and by the time we all got through to the end, lots of males had dropped out. I don't know why. Maybe for some of them it just wasn't for them, and maybe for some of them they figured out that they wanted to go off into the different careers, but there were lots of men that just didn't make it to the end. And I started questioning some of those thoughts around what it was, and as I've gone through my own career, I've started to really isolate out some of the things that can really put some people off. But ultimately, when I leaned into my career and realised that what male energy brought into those spaces, it was in good faith, a great partnership that was built with a lot of my female colleagues. When I started in education, I started a new entrance at Te Kōwhai School. I was really encouraged by my very good friend Jan Whaley to come and do that spot, take that position. I started with 32 5-year-olds. That was my first role. I'd always seen myself as an intermediate teacher, and I think that was driven by my experience at intermediate. I had Mr. Dodds, who really was one of my major inspirations for becoming a teacher, but also it was just there seemed to be a lot more males in the intermediate space than what I grew up with. In fact, I only had Mr. Dunstall in my whole primary career. I didn't know the reasoning for it until I actually started going into this, into the system, and started realising that because of some past wrongs, that a lot of males were a little bit scared to go into this sector. Fast forward, I get my role knowing that I'm going to be ably assisted by Jan. I take the new entrance job, 32 5-year-olds, and there were some very stark messages that I was told around keeping myself safe as a male educator, but also making sure we utilise my strengths. And I just didn't want to be known as a sports teacher or a PE teacher, which is often things that I used to get guessed as being. But I also wanted to make sure that that energy that I brought was real complementary to what kids needed, and especially at that time when it was becoming a lot more kind of relevant with single parent families or, you know, breakups in spaces where a male energy was needed, especially for some of our more ambitious and energetic boys. It was so rare and unique to have a male Māori new entrant teacher in 2004 that when I actually went to my first ever literacy course and I walked into the room, no one was being disrespectful, but some of the ladies actually asked me if I could go and get some more biscuits. They thought that I was the help. They thought that I was there to help stock up the resources. And I looked at these ladies and I said, oh, sorry, now I'm actually part of this course. And they were blown away. They were literally blown away. They were like, wait, you're a new entrance teacher? You're part of the junior school? I said, yeah, I am part of the junior school. It was so foreign to find a new entrant Māori male teacher. What did that opportunity teach me and give me? Well, the first thing was I had aspirations about becoming a school principal. And part of the reason why I actually took the role was because Jan said to me, because I told her early on I wanted to be principal as fast as I could, she said to me, well, if you want to be a great principal, you need to come and work in the junior school. You need to understand what junior school teachers go through. You need to understand about how to actually set up a real quality reading program, a real quality writing program, a real quality maths program. You need to learn how to manage kids and making sure that we can create environments where, you know, equity is really clear and evident and people get real good opportunities, while also learning my trade around, if I can, basically being told if I can manage 5-year-olds, I can manage any class that I wanted. That was a huge challenge for me, given to me, presented to me, and it was also around Jan challenging me and saying, well, let's break down some of those stereotypes. Let's break down some of those thoughts and feelings that are out in the communities about male teachers in younger children's spaces, and let's show them what it looks like in a quality situation. Jan walked me through a lot of the stuff that kind of played on my mind from university. And I'll talk about one thing that we were explicitly told at university. We were told to never hug a child. That was one thing we were told. We were given the explanation that if two kids come running around the corner and they run into each other, that I was encouraged to stand there and tell them to stand up, but dust yourself off, things like that. Now I understand what the thought is behind that. I understand it was about keeping myself safe and things like that. But it was also very hard in those elements when kids just needed a hug, or you actually just physically pick them up and dust them off and say, come on, get going, that you had to consider your safety in that space. But what that also taught me is around how to use my own body language and proximities around that sort of stuff. It taught me that having presence through smiles and laughter and high fives and fist bumps and things like that was a way that I could still get around young kids having the ability to get into a position and feel comfortable with me, but also making sure that I'm protecting myself from what needed to happen in a normal school day. The next challenge really from going into that new entrant space as a male educator for me was that I didn't have a lot of colleagues that I could go and talk to that were male. I was lucky enough that our principal was male and had taught in new entrants, albeit overseas, and years before I had done it. But that what the modern teacher required in that era for that new entrant space and what we had to be as male educators as well in that space was certainly a unique situation where I couldn't just drive to one of the local schools around us and go and talk to their male new entrance teachers. When I think through it, and I didn't think too deeply about it, I knew that it was probably not a done thing too much in terms of having male new entrance teachers. But it was just having the ability to look at a perspective or a way I approach something and start to think, what would some of my female colleagues do in that situation? How would they approach that situation? Am I being too hard? Do I not carry enough empathy? Is that situation more suited to in that conversation from taking a more feminine energy to approach how to break down what that child's going through? It was all those sorts of questions that I had that I couldn't really go out and talk to someone about it. And it wasn't like social media today where I could jump on some Facebook group or watch a YouTube channel. It was just a situation where I had to kind of figure it out. And that was a real interesting sort of space and energy to be in. I think I want to be very clear. We need male educators. We need them. Some of the best educators that I've ever worked with in my life, as well as some of the people that had the most impact on me, were male educators. They were strong in their beliefs. They held really strong values. They weren't toxically masculine, but they were masculine. They also encouraged me to lean into some of the other feelings and emotions that I felt, especially when I was a young teenage dad, confused and trying to figure out what life looked like for me, and anger was my first real response to a lot of situations. And I had these males that stepped in, and some of them, like Mr. Penner, who was a bit harder, but he was the one that would come around and give me a rocket up the arse if I wasn't doing what I should be doing. And then there was Mr. Henry Smith, Mr. Wilson, who carried a strong male energy, but they also had the ability to wrap their arm around me and say, hey, it's going to be okay, we'll get through this. We need a lot of male teachers. We need more of them. We need more of them. We need a lot more Māori, a lot more Pacifica teachers in that space. I've worked with some great ones, people like Junior Pailua up at Maneru Intermediate, Ian Taylor and them. It's those sorts of people that we need out in the world that carry that mana, that energy to really change the lives of some of our children. In those spaces, like Junior, where he is at intermediate, his energy, his male energy, combines beautifully with a lot of with the female colleagues that he's got around him. And it is that synergy that allows us to wrap holistically around children to enable some of those energies to really push and pull on what kids need at the time. But for us as male educators, it's also important for us to be able to get in the room and talk through some of this stuff, talk through some of the ways and approaches that we think should be done or how we should be carrying ourselves, and also be able to call each other out on some of the things that might not be so necessary in today's world that may have applied in yesterday's education scene. We do need more male educators. We need you guys to come out and change lives. We need you guys to get back out and work with communities and get involved in school events and run the kapahaka in sports and get in and help our other kaiako, our other teachers and what they do, because in that sense, when it comes back down to it, our education system is certainly one of the best in the world. It's certainly built on amazing values, built out from a te ao Māori perspective, while also dealing with a multicultural perspective and us having the ability to really build communities around a curriculum that really supports the well-being and needs of children. And ultimately, what we bring when we have males in this space is another set of eyes that come in with different perspectives, different ways of looking at things. And ultimately, what I do know is that some of the best schools that I've ever worked in have always had real high quality male teachers. We are really proud of the couple of male teachers that we have. And I do really challenge you, if you have been watching this or you know someone who would be a great teacher, is male and is out there, encourage them to go and study, because right now, what we would love to see more of, male educators out there bringing their energy and being part of changing the lives of kids for the better. Warriors v Tigers, up the wires.